We all have brains, which means mental health and wellness should be a concern for all of us. And that's where we are going on this edition of the Hear Me, See Me podcast. Welcome in. I'm your host, Melissa Bruner. Hear Me, See Me is a mental health awareness initiative of us here at WIBW TV, started from here in the capital city of Kansas, the great city of Topeka. And that is where Tricia Sublet is sanctioned, headquartered through an organization that bears the name SENT Topeka. Yeah. And this is a great topic because I think we say all the time, Tricia, that mental health does not have any sort of racial, economic, gender, societal barriers. It's everybody.
Absolutely.
What have you seen with that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you look at kind of the progression of the awareness of mental health, but also as people become more aware, the hope is then also the stigma is reduced, that it is okay to not be okay. And I think in some ways 2020 helped with that. Like everybody was not okay in some ways, and it became more normal to not quite be okay and to get a little outside help with that. And it doesn't mean this big crippling diagnosis, but it might just be like, man, right now I'm stressed, or right now the anxiety's just got me really having a hard time sleeping at night, things like that. Because so mental health has such a wide range of areas that it covers, but it impacts every part of our life.
That's a very important point to make, that when we talk about mental health, we're not necessarily talking about mental illness. That's certainly a part of it, but there's mental health is mental illness and it's general mental wellness as well.
Yeah.
Which is equally as important, I imagine.
Yeah, you know, when I started my career, they always talked about self-care. And I'd always say, okay, so I'd run really hard until I was just wiped out, and then I would crash, and I would rest, and then I would run really hard, and I would crash. And over the years, I've learned it's really more about these rhythms of care that keep me with better capacity to navigate from day to day. And if I'm running so hard that I have to crash, I'm not taking care of myself daily by nurturing my nervous system, by taking those breaks, by clocking out of the job or the stress, or finding ways to renew myself.
What different areas did you work in before SENT Topeka came into being?
I've been in the mental health field for a number of years in different capacities, and before that I taught English overseas.
Why not?
Yeah.
So let's go backward before we come back to the mental health. SENT Topeka itself. What is the organization? What was the history of how it got its start?
So the idea is that we want to create a space where we can holistically change our neighborhood. So it stands for strengthening and equipping neighborhoods together. And the picture of holistic care for our neighborhood can't be one area. So lots of organizations and initiatives really focus on one area, and that is wonderful. But we are a community development nonprofit, and we work with strategic development and loving relationships to really holistically care for our neighborhood. So we partner really well with some agencies who can take care of this piece, but we really stay in our lane and say these are the initiatives that we do. So we do housing, working for affordable quality housing for all income levels. We work with education, and we say cradle to career. Not everyone's going to college, but everyone's got next steps. And so a lot of ways we work with that is really being present in our local schools and really helping in those areas, as well as some other initiatives. And then we have community wellness, which is the branch which my mental health department falls under. So if we work on these three areas and we're holistically changing our neighborhood, we're going to see development in our neighborhood, not just relief.
For those who are listening or watching outside of the Topeka area, I think perhaps a little bit of a history on how this all developed might be helpful, because it's something that can apply to probably most communities across our country, especially those with an urban population. So the High Crest neighborhood of Topeka is where you are, Southeast Topeka. It's an area that historically has seen a lot of poverty, a lot of challenges in that way, and a lot of crime. And years ago, before SENT Topeka, our Topeka Rescue Mission Ministries started a program called NetReach out of the High Crest neighborhood. And it was meant to put a neighborhood in intensive care and see what kind of services that they could come in and intensively concentrate on that area, in the hope then that would lay the foundation for others to come in and continue those programs. And so we had NetReach, and then in some ways, shape or form, a little bit gave rise to SENT Topeka. Would that be a fair way of putting it?
I think that was kind of the stepping stone into being able to create this nonprofit in the area. And one of the values that we have is is redistribution of opportunities, but also relocation. And relocation means most of our staff lives or does a lot of life in the High-Crest community. We don't come in as outside experts, if you will.
We're going to tell you what to do.
Yes, no, we listen to our community and we live in our community. We want to see changes for our community. And so the face of SENT has changed somewhat, though the values have stayed the same. Some of the programming has adapted simply by listening to what the community says is needed. And that's where a lot of the things have birthed and started.
So when SENT Topeka first came in, and again, going from the first focus was crime, safety. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if I remember my I was a psych second major for a while, and then I was like, oh, I didn't want to be in school anymore. So I'm like, I'm not going to get a master's degree. I'm going to start my career in communications. But I still remember that foundation because it really does apply to a lot of things in society. So I remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of our basic needs is to feel safe. Yeah. So when SENT Topeka came in, was that the foundational need you saw, and or what other things did you see that played into what those initial programs were from SENT?
So I actually didn't join staff on SENT until 2020. I worked in another organization for a while, but housing was one of the first initiatives. And we also created a summer launch program. So being a safe space for students in the summers to have a place to learn and to have a routine and to have meals and things like that, because that prevents kids from going back to school in the summer slide where you go back and you don't remember anything from the previous year and you have to spend a couple weeks relearning everything. But then that housing initiative is saying if you don't have a safe, secure place to stay, it's hard to care about those other things higher upon Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
And like food.
Yes, food insecurities is a huge thing. Clemson University did a study that says a 1% increase in food insecurities can equal a 15% increase in crime. So just being able to say holistically we're caring for our neighborhood, we're going to see this drop in or improvement in multiple areas, not just one area.
How do all of these things play into mental health and mental well-being then?
So one of the things I really appreciate about the leadership at SENT is they're very innovative and forward-thinking. We're early adopters, I think, in many things. And so in 2020, the leadership said, man, if we want to holistically change our neighborhood, we cannot ignore mental health. So they brought me on staff and we set up the mental health department with the idea of what are some of the primary barriers that prevent people from getting help, prevent people from getting mental health support. And accessibility and affordability are two of the top ones. So those were the two primary barriers that I was like, I gotta hack these two. Of course, there's others like stigma and long wait time, those kind of things. But so by being in our community, we're an access point. Our community is a bit of a transportation desert. We have one bus stop in our little neighborhood. So if you do want to go to a mental health appointment across town and you don't have a vehicle, man, riding that bus could take half a day, a full day of your time for that 1 hour appointment, or relying on a friend or other means of transportation can be challenging. So creating that access point, but then also affordability. A lot of people, even co-pays on insurance can be, I can come once every 2 months. That's not, in my opinion, great mental health support, because we need more consistent support to hit those goals and to make progress in a lot of areas. And so we really worked with an adjusted fee scale to make it affordable at every income level, with our goal of not allowing finances to prevent somebody from getting that support if that's what they really are ready for.
When you back up to the transportation part, you think, who doesn't have a car? You're talking about a neighborhood where people don't have a lot of extras. They can't afford a lot.
Yeah, or one flat tire can knock you out, and you're like, hey, my budget didn't accommodate for that for this month. So now we have to make that decision. Like, what do we pay for, or what do we go without this month? So just being able to create those access points, which is that redistribution piece that I talked about. It's not robbing the rich and feeding the poor. It's saying we're gonna reduce the barriers to make services accessible. So by being able to bring many services to our building, we're creating that access point. We have a chiropractor that comes in once a week. We have an occupational therapist that comes in once a week. So we're creating that access point and a one-stop shop so families can come not run around town, but get lots of needs met in one space. We have our clinic, we have substance use, we have neighbor advocacy. You can really have multiple appointments in one stop. It just reduces travel time, reduces stress. I don't like running around town for all my appointments.
Right.
So if I can get multiple things in one spot, then hopefully we're creating lower barriers for families.
What does living in a place where your safety has been in question, where you perhaps are someone living in poverty and you're struggling to find that next meal, what does that do to your mental health? What are the things that you're experiencing?
So think about, like, if I don't know if I'm safe, then I'm constantly living in, so this upstairs brain is where we do all our thinking, downstairs brain is fight, flight, freeze. And if I'm having more risks, either physical risks, or I don't know where my next meal is, or even like, not maybe physical risks, but like, hey, I don't know if I'm accepted or if this is a felt safe place where I really can be myself, then we're going to live closer to this downstairs brain, and we're going to be closer to that fight, flight, freeze response. So that's just chronic stress. And we know that can take a big toll on our physical health, but also just really affect our ability to concentrate in school, ability to navigate systems, navigate job applications, staying consistent on appointments. It can mess with our sleep. So it really can just create a space where I'm living closer to the edge all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's that nervous system when I feel like, oh, I got to crash. Like I get there too. But when I have so many stressors, it can just build up faster, and I have less capacity to manage that.
So recognizing that is what led you all to recognize, oh, hey, we probably have a greater need here than you even realized for mental health and wellness services.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at all of those factors together, it's not a big jump to say, oh, we probably ought to care for people's mental health, not just food, health, and shelter. If we help somebody get a really quality house, we feed them, but they don't have the support mentally. What if they can't make it to their job and they lose their job? Now, how are they going to pay their rent? So it all ties in together in one way or the other. Sometimes very quick and fast you can see the impact, and sometimes it takes a lot longer to kind of see people rebuild that space.
The accessibility piece is an interesting one as well, because like years ago, wasn't that kind of the joke that it was only people of wealth who had therapists? Every wealthy person had a therapist, and you didn't really think about it being something that folks of limited means perhaps did.
Yeah, I kind of joke it's still kind of a middle class luxury, because a lot of times if I really am kind of on the lower parts of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I don't really have the space or time to, let's work on that trauma, you know? Mm-hmm. I really am just like, I got to figure out today and tomorrow and how to feed my kids tonight. And so really, sometimes those initial steps of mental health support at SENT is really just setting goals, getting them to the next space, and really helping line them up with the neighbor advocates to kind of get on some of those benefits, access some of those things that they're working on accessing. So we may not do a deep dive into some of those deeper mental health things right away. We might really work on support and stability, and even just being able to sit in somebody's office and somebody validating, that's a lot. You're managing a lot. Can feel so relieving. Somebody gets it. I'm seen, I'm heard, I'm valued, and I'm not over exaggerating, I'm not being dramatic. It is a lot I'm doing, and that can start to build somebody and say, wait, I've overcome quite a lot already. I've got this. I can do this with this support to kind of keep nudging me along.
You mentioned trauma. You used the word trauma, which we didn't even get into.
Yeah.
You know, how much have you learned about the impact of trauma that is imparted from living in some of the situations that folks in a lower income neighborhood or perhaps a neighborhood where there has been violence, how that has impacted them?
I think most of my career, trauma has always come back to, like, this is the baseline of what we see. Living overseas, I got to see different levels of trauma. I started my career at a rape crisis center, so everybody's coming with some kind of a trauma, whether it's firsthand or vicarious trauma by those I loved. And so I sometimes think that trauma has become a buzzword in our community. Everybody says, oh, that was so traumatizing, but they don't fully understand what it means. But it has raised the awareness that in some ways, there's a lot of trauma that we've experienced at different levels, and it's not all equal or equally impactful. But raise the awareness of our community and society that it is a real thing and it does have a real impact. It's not just affecting people who've gone to war or been in active, like, gang zones or something like that.
Right.
It really can be everyday things or everyday circumstances that I am encountering.
You know, and I think it's not a contest, and I think I
No.
first read about that in Elizabeth Smart's book, where she talked about her experience being abducted and not being found until several months later. But as she has encountered people, it's not a contest as to whose trauma was worse. Just because she was abducted and missing for a long time doesn't mean that's any worse than someone who went through an experience that perhaps only lasted a few minutes or a few hours. It's not a contest. Everybody's trauma matters to them.
Right. And one of the first trainings I went to when I started my career was talking about the ACEs score, the Adverse Childhood Experiences. So that's the number of things you've experienced in childhood that contribute to, you know, the traumas you're experiencing. But the training was about resiliency. And they said, here's how we build resiliency skills, because resiliency trumps ACEs. So I always tell clients, you and I could be in the same car accident and you bounce back and I don't. Because it depends on those other resiliency factors that are built in through nature, through nurture, through things I've accomplished, things you've accomplished. And so there's so many ways that we can rebuild someone through building their capacity by resiliency skills and empowering them.
Well, I want to talk about the resilience that you've
Yeah.
seen in the community and the folks that you have been working with, and how this perhaps is something that all communities everywhere can learn from. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. We're continuing our conversation with Tricia Sublet. She's the mental health director at an organization called SENT Topeka. And as we've learned, Tricia, there are so many things SENT has done that can be lessons learned and an example for all communities across our great nation. And that's this holistic approach, the ways of addressing and bringing services right to people. How easy or difficult? What were the barriers perhaps to even getting buy-in to that, to realizing that mental health services aren't a luxury that you have to be able to travel in order to get?
You know, sometimes people say, I don't need mental health support, I'm not crazy. And I just look at them and say, everyone deserves support. So it's really getting that buy-in that, you know, whatever you're going through, at whatever level, you know, there's somebody here that can walk alongside you with that. It's kind of fun to me when I get a teen in my office who's like, Mom's making me be here, because I look at it a bit like a challenge, and I'm like, okay, let's give it a month and see how it goes, because I said I don't want to waste your time. And usually after a month, not always, but usually they find enough relief of having somebody who listens for a full hour and gives them feedback and talks to them and doesn't like mom them, that they're like, oh yeah, I want to come back. And so I think it's just really kind of changing that narrative of what mental health support is. You know, that we're not laying on the couch with this, like, somebody who's like analyzing your dreams. No, we're letting you talk, and then often you're the one figuring out the solutions, and you have support kind of calling out the, like, let's reframe that, or hey, did you hear that you said this, or let's think about it like this, and here's some skills to use along the way. So really it is, mental health support is for everybody at some level when they're ready. And you have to be ready too, because forced mental health doesn't really work.
True. It has to be someone's decision to get better. You hear about that with a lot of things. How have you been able to overcome any stigma or pushback to people seeking help?
So one of the things that I think is important, like in a community that's under-resourced, is they're used to people coming in and leaving. And that long haul of we're here to stay is one of the things that SENT has really pushed towards establishing, and that has built the trust. So if people don't trust you, they're not going to come sit in your office. And so over time, over consistency, over being present, over just being there is how we're working to overcome some of that trust. And then one of our, we call it the funnel, is our pantry. A lot of times people walk sit in line at the pantry, and like we get to talk with them, and they're like, oh, we didn't even know that was here. We didn't even know that was here. And we're like, hey, well, do you want us to sign you up? Do you want somebody to call you and talk about what that would look like? And so just being that access point and that consistent face, you see me once, you don't trust me. You see me the next time and you say hi. But after several times of seeing somebody, like that trust starts to build because there's a familiarity of that.
That's the holistic approach thing coming back again. If someone encounters you at the food pantry or in the health clinic, the physical health clinic, because mental health is health, then they're like, okay, I can go here as well. It's this whole full circle approach that you've been able to develop. So you saw demand, you saw a potential for demand, a potential need. How has that borne out? What has happened since you've implemented the mental health services? Well,
it didn't take long. Some clients find you that you've worked with before, but then the community starts to spread the word on their own. And eventually, within the first year, we've gotten on insurance panels. We provided a lot of reduced cost services, but within 1 year, our little department was self-sustaining because we built that demand that quick. But over time, we've come to start looking at the data, and we're like, wow, we've served 19 different cities and towns in Kansas. Some people driving 80 miles.
Wow! Because
in little rural communities, either there's not a healthcare or mental health provider, or I know them and I don't want to go see them. Or they don't have the specialty that I need. So like I had somebody say, I need EMDR. So I found you and I'm going to drive to your office. I said, all right, come on in. And so just recognizing that telehealth is another great option for rural communities. But that face-to-face, I feel like I can care for people better. I want them in my office. And people will seek it out when they're ready for that.
It's interesting that a little neighborhood clinic is something that's kind of gaining traction even outside, and now they're coming to you when the whole goal was to be there for people who are nearby.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's interesting.
That's fascinating. So what have you seen? For sports fans out there, it's kind of like the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And so you built it, and lo and behold, they came.
Yeah, we have a strong Facebook presence. We have little advertising here and there, but we don't advertise much. They just come.
They know you're there in the community. Like you said, you're kind of that familiar face. What difference have you seen it make?
I was thinking about that because it's hard to measure, mental health as a whole sometimes because people don't always share things. But I think sometimes we see the small impacts and we see the community-wide impacts. And so I was thinking about like the little girl who gave me a note last week. She's 7 and it said, "You're the best therapist ever." Well, I'm the only therapist she's ever had, but that's okay. I'll still take it. And then her mom's saying, she leaves here every week saying, "This was the best day ever." And her teachers are saying, the days after therapy are usually her best days at school. So it's these little things that we see that impact for one life. And then we also can sit by mom and say, hey, this sounds like it's tough. Do you want some support? So we can layer on that support for the family. Hey, we have a caregiver coach. Would you like to talk to somebody? Or do you need mental health support too? So being able to wrap around the family as a whole.
And even go back to just the point of a mom who perhaps has limited means, and in the past, if someone would have suggested that, the response might have been, well, okay, fine, and then they walk out the door thinking, well, I can't afford that, so forget it. And the child may grow up and not even have the ability to get into therapy or receive assistance until they're a young adult, and by that time, how much time has been lost? When you can help a child at 7 years old to have mom be given this feedback that maybe this could help your child, for mom to know there's an organization there in the neighborhood, I don't have to travel far, they're right there, I can make this work, so therefore I'm going to try it. Now the child actually is getting help at a younger age. What is the ripple effect that happens from all of this?
Yeah, so obviously we're impacting a small child, which is impacting her schoolwork, which is going to also impact home. Because if this child's doing better at home, as a mom, if I'm getting calls from the school, that increases my stress level. Okay, what do I need to do different? How can I correct it? I'm not at the school. How can I change this for my kiddo when they go to school? How can I make sure that they're acclimating better or getting their schoolwork done on time? So it's going to increase my stress level if my kid's not doing well at school. So if we're changing a child, we're also wrapping around the family with all those supports, then one family at a time, we're going to see a change in that community.
And generationally, because now that child's set up for future success.
Yeah.
All because
Hopefully.
they got help.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal. What have you seen neighborhood-wide then? Now that everybody knows you're there,
Yeah.
now that you have this holistic approach, all these services are going on. What are we seeing happen in your neighborhood?
Yeah, so we measure a lot by the community health maps that the city puts out. And when we started, Highcrest is kind of like the west side and the east side. The west side was all dark red, which is intensive care. And there's several markers, I don't remember all of them, that they measure, but I think it's housing and violence and education and employment, those type of markers. And we don't necessarily directly work on each one of those, but recognizing that the work that we're doing as a whole is empowering people in those areas and showing a difference. So the east side was I think pink, which is not intensive care but at risk, and then some blue and light blue. And now the last health map that came out for the first time ever, the west side of Highcrest is pink, not red. So the first time ever it's moved from intensive care to at risk, and the other side is blue. It's healthy. And so those are how we celebrate, because we can't measure each and every little impact per se, but we can say as a community as a whole, are we moving towards health? And okay, our model is working, our impact is happening. It's very exciting.
Very exciting, and I think kind of gratifying too. What lessons can be learned across the board from this difference that has happened there?
So our goal is that we're creating a model that can be replicated in any community. If we're in an underserved or under-resourced community, so if it can work here, then why couldn't it work in a small western Kansas town or city? So it will have to adapt, it'll have to look a little bit different, right? But if we create a model that we can share, then we can impact our state.
What does this teach us about access?
Access is important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, being present in our community, walking alongside our neighborhoods, being there for the long haul, not expecting that immediate gratification. It's impactful. One day at a time, one step at a time, 1 year at a time, we're seeing the changes.
I think there's kind of a human lesson too, because sometimes, just like I said, there's kind of a joke that therapy is only for rich people. It's a luxury. It's not something everybody needs. I think too that sometimes when people look at the community as a whole, you might think that there's an area that's less than, that some people aren't worth it.
Yep.
Because why even try? They're not going to be accepting of it. They're not going to be open to accepting this help. They're not even going to want it there. They're not going to use it. I think SENT Topeka shows that it's completely the opposite. Yeah. First of all, everybody's worth it. I think let's get over that in our hearts first of all, right? Everybody is worth it. And people will be open and accepting if you just give them a chance to be open and accepting to that help.
We really, really operate with every person has infinite dignity, value, and worth. And if we shift from that belief, then the things we're doing is just busy work, because we're doing it for the impact of the people that we're walking alongside. These are our neighbors, these are our friends. And if we can't see the value as a person and who they are, then it's just busy work. And that's not what we're about. And
it doesn't happen overnight. I think that was an important point you made as well. And it's something that we've had in conversations with people who've come on and shared their personal story. It's not like, okay, I'm going to go to a therapy session for 3 months. Everything's better. The work is done. It's perfect. Nothing's ever going to be a challenge ever again. It takes work.
Yes. Yes. I tell people my magic wand's in the shop.
Oh,
so like, and I think that work is in each of our individual lives too. As I work with clients, I can see areas that, I used to do that as well. How did I get to this point, and where do I still have to go? If I stop growing, how can I lead somebody further? And so it's a personal reflection, and it's a team reflection, and then it's kind of saying, okay, how can I impart some of these strategies that worked for me for somebody else, and figuring out what will work best for them.
So give the community leaders your little sales pitch that shows them an investment is worth it. Any community leader out there who might be listening, anywhere in the world.
Yeah. So SENT is a non-religious community development nonprofit working for holistic transformation of our neighborhood through strategic development and loving relationship. And we believe every person has infinite dignity, value, and worth. And if you want to come and see, we'll give you a tour. Come see the impacts, come see the lives, come see the faces that we serve. We would love to show you around and show you ways to partner, to be involved, or to take parts of what we're doing, our strategies back to your own community as well.
Exactly. And I think too, when you boil down the dollars and cents, gosh, if people feel better about themselves, if they are able to get past the food needs initially, the housing needs initially, then suddenly they're able to get a job. They're able to further invest in the community by buying a home, perhaps. If they aren't facing those stressors, they have food, they're not committing crimes, which means your police force isn't there with the resources. It's this like return on investment is immeasurable.
Holistic approach, yeah. So we actually measure on our food pantry, we want to see a decrease in numbers, not an increase, because we're like, okay, that's showing people that are showing that they don't need this anymore. And so kind of recognizing if someone is regularly visiting our pantry, what do we need to do to walk alongside them to be able to make that next step and not need us anymore? We just want to supplement. We don't want to take over and do all of that. That's not what we're about either. We want to see a growth for each family.
Well, we can see we can envision a SENT organization all over the place.
Everywhere.
Instead of SENT Topeka, SENT Emporia,
Yes.
SENT Madison, SENT Oklahoma City, whatever we want to say, because it is such a good model. The holistic approach, I think you've shown how it works, and it's very interesting to hear about and to hear those differences and wins that are happening in your community that perhaps could be duplicated elsewhere. Tricia Sublet, SENT Topeka, appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
And if you would like more resources, of course, you can visit SENT Topeka, or you can head to wibw.com/hearmesee me for a whole list all over the time, as they've shown in Southeast Topeka. And no matter where you are, we hear you, we see you.